Well, welcome today. We have Karen Holmes, all the way from Canada, who is a you're an editor and you're helping Maureen with this Good Darkness book.
Uh,
And just wanted to let people know that you have a master's in transformative spiritual leadership. Is that right?
hmm hmm
And you are currently a student getting a doctorate in
Ministry.
ministry. So you're a heavy hitter, Karen, and I know you've done a whole bunch of other things, but would love to hear how you and Karen began this journey together that goes before this book.
Yes. Well, Maureen and I first met in 2007. And in fact, we met here where I live right now, which is just north of Kingston, Ontario. And we met here because we were working on a camp, a summer camp, summer arts camp for young women.
Ah,
And Maureen was doing the visual art component with the uh, young teenage girls. So between the ages of 12 and I think 15 it was. And our work here, my work here I wasn't really offering any programming, but we knew the woman who was directing the camp who lived across the river from us. And she knew that we had an acre plus of property upon which the camp could be held. And both Kevin, my husband, and I had background in education. And so we agreed for that to happen. And that's how I met Maureen. And we just started to have a few conversations. She came to a few gatherings here. I went to uh, I think it was her 50th, or no, it wasn't her 50th. No, her 60th. Sorry. It wasn't her 50th. I'm sorry. Her 60th birthday party. And I started to get to know her more. And we traveled together to a women's herbal conference down in New Hampshire a couple of
ah,
times.
that's
And on one of those occasions, we witnessed the work of Elisa Starkweather, uh, who is one of the founders of the Red Tent movement.
oh.
And right. And Maureen and I got talking, and Maureen said, this doesn't seem right somehow. There's something missing here. And so we had many more conversations. And for Maureen, the key element was that the darkness was not being honored,
Mm,
and also that the power of the womb was not being honored.
mm,
Because the conversations, I'm not saying this is what the whole thing was about. I don't know enough about the Red Tent movement to make any blanket judgments,
mhm.
but it seemed that when the gathering that we witnessed was more focused on talking about the pain associated with menstruation.
Oh.
And it became very clear in conversations with Maureen that she wanted to make it more positive. She wanted to find what um, the power and the gift of the womb was. And that's really what started our journey with that element. Starting in 2009, uh, I developed cycle of the year retreats, so at turning points of the year. And many of these had a Christian element. They did, all of them did actually, because I was trying to understand the relationship between Christ and the earth. But that wasn't the dominant thing. The dominant thing was that the women would come together and we would sit in the darkness at that time of the year and share what was moving in us, whether it was Samhain or All Souls, or whether it was at Ustra, I start, with Easter, or whether it was, winter solstice, summer solstice, all these things. At these turning points, we would come together and meet. And so that went on for 2009, we started with Samhain, and the last one took place in the year of the new Mayan calendar. And well, just leading up to it. So in 2012. Okay.
Okay.
And so we had that time where we got to know each other quite well. And I used to arrive with a carload of stuff. And Maureen, like cloths and things I associated with the time of the year, certain objects. And Maureen and I would spend, 5 or 6 hours together setting up like giant altar spaces that were not just on a table, but were actually all encompassing environments.
Wow.
So I don't, you've been to Wildwood Sojourn. She has a beautiful upstairs studio space.
Yes.
And that whole upstairs studio space would be turned into this kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also would be using the little yurt that she had, the Mongolian yurt that she had got in early 2009 for the dark lodge aspect, the component of the weekend. And these were full weekend retreats. So it was I got to know her quite well through this process. And so that's how it started. But then the other thing we got involved with together was the bringing of Dr. Cindy Lindsay Real at that time to Canada to teach her work on the Caro blood masteries. And so she came in 2010, but Maureen and I had about 18 months before that, we were prepping, and we actually did a promotional video with someone in Tyendinaga, and we were really trying to present these blood masteries as part of this dark lodge experience. And actually, just before Cindy came, Maureen made the firm intention to offer a dark lodge space every month at the new moon. So we had Dr. Cindy Lindsay come, and we had about 10 women. We did a lot of promotion. We went to Toronto, and we, brought our little pack, and we did our little, road show. And it was great. And we had about 10 women come. And I should add here that it was Maureen who first got in touch with Dr. Cindy Lindsay, because she found out she tells the story in her book. I won't tell it for her, but
okay.
Technically what really happened was that she was looking for womb wisdom.
Right.
And so Dr. Cindy Lindsay advertised that she'd been studying these blood masteries, meaning the womb blood masteries, with the Caro shamans in person. And this really excited Maureen. And so that's why this even happened, because of Maureen's enthusiasm for what Cindy was actually learning from the Caro.
Right.
It turned out when Dr. Cindy Lindsay came, she let us know that actually she was transitioning away from the Caro blood masteries, and that she would be from henceforth be working with the holy womb chakra of Sri Kaleshwar,
right?
Who is he's transitioned now, a teacher in India. And so Maureen was like, "What? We just got you here. What are we going to do? We wanted you to talk to us about the blood masteries." And so, but anyway, Cindy made a vow to Sri Kaleshwar that she would not teach that any longer.
Wow.
So the nice thing is, Cindy gave us audio recordings of all of her teachings. So we were able to actually listen to those. And for many years, actually, and Maureen far more consistently than I, every new moon would offer aspects of Cindy's Caro teachings.
Right.
And one of the first things that Maureen started doing was teaching the Andean cosmology.
Okay.
of how the world came into being, which she actually shares in her book.
Okay. Awesome.
And so yeah, that's so we worked on that together.
Wow. Yeah. I love hearing all these extra
It's a very
details.
long, detailed story. I'm sure you find that
Fabulous though,
interesting,
Karen. It's
but yeah,
great.
that's, and so it's so fascinating because there I was, a person who had come out of, and actually had worked for the Roman Catholic Church in Hamilton, had left that, and was currently working as a spiritual director, but mostly with, I mean, I not mostly within the Christian tradition. And there she was, a visual artist who was doing these murals of mythology of on the in the First Nations schools, and then spreading that message to other schools in the catchment area, in the geographical area. And so, but it was just so fascinating because we had this same interest in darkness and how darkness had been maligned and how darkness had come to mean totally always negative things.
Right.
Especially like even, certainly within Christian circles, it was all light, 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 light,
Right.
like till your eyes were popping out of your head. and in New Age circles, it was also about light and ascension. So she and I were both about the descent, and darkness, and trying to reclaim what that meant. And that was connected with the womb for both of us, despite our differences in background.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is, in and of itself, that is incredible right there, because it's almost sort of like the female and male complementary aspect of this practice of bringing, the non-duality. And so here you two are modeling that in your deep connection.
Exactly. That's a brilliantly put, Michelle, because this work that Maureen presents is about not falling into false duality. It's about honoring difference and recognizing that difference can be generative when we enter into collaboration. We surf on those horizontal waves of energy together. We can generate, right?
Nice.
But it's not falling into false duality, where you think that, just because some person has had these experiences or claims to have this identity, that you couldn't possibly have anything to do with it, and this kind of false kind of, oh, I can never meet you because we're always ships passing in the night and we don't really have anything in common.
Right.
The great thing about the good darkness is that it brings together everyone. So it is the matriarchal matrix. So it's got that way of really being able, like wisdom herself, being able to hold things together that don't appear from outward appearances to have anything in common. So it's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. I love all of this the frame that you're bringing to this, because I know Maureen's perspective on this, and then to hear your additional framing, even though she probably has it too by now, but you're really fleshing this out for us a little more about the impact and scope of this work. It's not just a heart to womb meditation here. There's a lot bigger
Yes.
impact here.
Now, Maureen went on a real vision quest with this.
Right.
I went on a vision quest with it in a sense too, but not in that way. Right. I would say that my approach was far more the approach of research, practicing things in prayer and meditation, that sort of thing, finding sources that had been hidden in my tradition that referenced these very things. Wow. All right. But we really weren't on the same track. We were both doing our own work independently. Maureen really went on a vision quest with this. She worked with sacred plant medicines, and she really sought to see what this was about. so that she could depict it, which is, of
Mm,
course, what she has done in this book.
right.
She's actually taken the fruit of her visions
Hmm.
and she's put them into illustration form. And she's also constructed the meditation that goes along with those visualizations that she has basically uncovered or retrieved through her own soul work. So this book of Maureen's is no head trip, let me tell you. This is a heart and soul body work
Mm.
of recovering something that was neglected,
Mm.
if not outright uh, persecuted, and then hence forgotten.
And when you say that, do you mean the blood masteries? Do you mean the power of the womb? Does it encompass more for you?
Yes, it is. It's blood masteries. It's the way that we can become, we can access cosmic wisdom.
Mm.
And it's very difficult for some people to understand this because that it's so embodied.
Mm.
But it is very important in this understanding
Hmm.
that we are embodied, so that the organs of our body are part of how we bring ensoulment to this planet and
Beautiful.
how we become more fully who we're called to be. And it's very difficult because so much of what we do is really, we tend to think about things like, it doesn't really matter where I am and it doesn't really matter what my biography, that we can sort of tap into universal sources of knowledge. But what Maureen is saying with this book is we go into our very organs
Mm.
and it's sacred physiology. Our body has sacred physiology. And this is where there is a lot of accord with some Steiner thinking as well,
Okay.
right? Because
Right.
so there's a sacred physiology. The body is the temple of the Holy Spirit in the Christian tradition. And again, those words are used very lightly, but actually Maureen takes it quite literally, that in our sacred physiology, we have the means to access cosmic wisdom.
Mm.
And she believes women, because we are carriers of the womb, have a special and significant role in that. Not to say men can't access it at all. That's not what she's saying. But
Hmm.
she's saying that women, because of the womb,
Mm.
have a special role to play in that accessing of cosmic wisdom.
Hmm.
Now, of course, the other thing that she recovered wasn't just the cosmic wisdom part, it was actually this whole millennia long tradition of parthenogenesis, which many people, when you can talk about the cosmic wisdom, but when you start talking about parthenogenesis, sometimes they're like, what? What's that? Like it's whoa, 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 way. You know what I mean? Isn't that all that stuff that science told us was bogus about the Virgin Mary?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff.
Right.
The nice thing is there are people who are working on actually saying, hold on a minute, people, even though science says right now this isn't possible, let's start looking at it seriously, because actually there is emerging science that points out to more than the distinct possibility of parthenogenesis.
Right.
And also people like Dr. Marguerite Ragugliosa has done wonderful work actually recovering this parthenogenetic tradition
Mm.
amongst women
Hmm.
that was more than documented in
Right.
aeons past. And now Maureen has done such great work, actually saying to us that, hold on, this was even active 200 or 300 years ago. So, and you can read about that in the book too. She talks about this. So, and then sometimes people go, oh, well, that means you're leaving men out. Not at all.
Right.
Men have a presence in this. All right. So it's very interesting where her research led her. She has stayed very true to it. She has stayed very open even 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Maureen said to me, I think I have to change the meditation, a part of the meditation, because, I've had this, the womb blood purifies, like lifts up and allows the karmic blood to be removed from the heart. So it doesn't have to descend again. She was open to totally changing her whole system
Mm.
based on what she's getting. Now, of course, she didn't totally change it. She integrated the new piece.
Right.
But what I'm saying is there's a great openness in
Mm.
Maureen to not hold on to a system.
Mm.
She doesn't see it as hers.
Mm-hmm.
She's not, her ego's not bound up in it. Well, not in an unhealthy way, I don't find. Everybody
Yeah,
have to have a bit of ego in
you
everything, right?
do.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing anything. But I mean, like, it's not bound up in it. So
Right.
she's wanting to really share this and to keep learning. And in her book, she actually keeps saying that to the reader. What do you think about this?
Mm.
Why don't you try this? Let me know what you think of that. She really wants to continue to build this,
Mm.
not this wisdom base through
Right.
her, and that's partly why she wanted to write the book. She wanted it to get out there so that women actually started, and groups of people associated with women as support would actually start using it
Mm.
and see what emerged. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that. That's so alive, and so much to her credit to stay in that openness of evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of courage. It
Mm-hmm.
really does. And that's something I would say about Maureen. She's a very courageous woman.
Mm.
She's always stood by her principles. She's very, um, she made a go of it in her own business, her own world. She created her own role. She is a person who I would call a truth teller,
Mm.
so she has that integrity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I think this is pretty amazing stuff. I'm just wondering,
What do you say after that, right?
I know, I'm like, wow, you've really done fantastic bringing all this
Buy the book.
together. What's that? Buy the book. Yes, buy the book.
Support
Well,
it.
I guess I'm really curious, you being the editor of this book and a real sounding board and contributor to help this process evolve. Like it's really been such a contribution for her to have you and Helen and other women.
Yep.
Um, how is it how has it been for you? Do you want to say anything about this journey for you being involved so deeply from really from the start in many ways, but even more deeply now with the editing is creating a whole new level of intensity for both of you.
Well, what I will say this, um, all the words in the book are Maureen's.
Wow.
So like, so one of, it was difficult to find an editor. At first I resisted because I really thought, oh gosh, I don't want to get involved with this. And I hope we don't get into arguments. And, I really wanted to preserve the relationship, quite honestly, over doing the editing. So she asked a few other people before approaching me. And really, she got right away that someone would have to understand this work in order to edit it.
Yeah.
So it just seemed that even though my world was the last thing in a way I wanted to take on, because I thought it might create conflict, but also my schedule was just so crazy busy with everything that's happened with COVID, everything shifting and everything like that, that I really didn't feel that confident taking it on. But I had worked as a copy editor, and I had worked as an assistant to an editor in a publishing company before. So I had some skills with that.
Yeah.
And
Great.
also, of course, I knew the work. I knew it, even though I come at it from a different angle.
Yep.
I knew it. So Maureen we first started looking at this in September of last year. She had already got about 200 plus pages written. And So my job really was to reorder things and to help her order the book. Because when you're immersed in something, it's really hard to see where the tail is and where the head is and where the fins are and all these things.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of my job, to help her with that.
Hmm.
So we started work on that. We met in my backyard here in a beautiful day in late September 2021. And then the actual editing of the book started in earnest after we made the decision that I would do the work in late February. And from then on, things have fallen in place quite remarkably. I actually find the editing of this book to be very uplifting. I was thinking it was going to be, even though I knew it was great material, I was going, oh my gosh, I worked for years as a teacher correcting people's essays. I'm going to do this again. And, and I just was like, no, the work was very energizing because I could feel an accord, even though I'm coming from a different worldview, I
Yeah.
could feel a total accord with what Maureen was writing about. In Maureen, I felt resonance with the medieval cosmologists like Hildegard of Bingen
Mm.
or Alain de Lille. Before the scientific revolution claimed that spirituality couldn't be in science, right? I could feel that. I could feel the work of the early space makers in the Christian communities who would actually create sacred space and would allow something to come into their circle, into the sacred hexagon, in order to create something new and to heal. So there were all sorts of resonances, and that was one thing. And the other thing was I learned so much from reading it. So it was just like, wow, it's taken a long time because it's a big book.
Yeah.
It's big in terms of giving examples
Mm.
as well as elaborating the mythology and the implications of that mythology for our times. Now, I don't know how much you want to get into this here, but really, we are facing quite perilous times as organic entities.
Right.
And so, what Maureen is offering is actually a way to help not only maintain, but revivify our organic integrity
Mm.
in this age of AI, right?
Right.
So anyway, I found it uplifting, the resonances, the new learning, and also the real implication and application for our current life
Mm.
was all there. And so my job really was reordering things, making sure that sentences were complete, that there were, that everything flowed, that sort of thing. So that's what my job was.
Well, I just think that is no small feat because, to take someone's words and keep the integrity of their words and find a way to organize it and complete sentences and make things flow, that's pretty masterful. I just want to acknowledge that energy and
Well,
effort you
it's
put into
possible
it.
because I think it's possible because I knew her and I really respected Maureen. I really do respect Maureen. And I think that I was very pleasantly surprised that my suggestions, she actually liked them
Yeah.
because I think we were enough in sync with one another that it wasn't a changing of anything so much as an amplification or a magnification of what she was trying to do.
Well, for example, she told me that because I asked her, I said, "What is there a Peruvian goddess that's associated with this work?" And because I thought it might be Pachamama or something. And she goes, "The Wirakucha." And I was like, "What's the Wirakucha?" And because I heard that was some male creator god. And she goes, "No, it's the cosmic void." And Karen says it's the same as Sophia. So it's like you're bringing in, this comparative mystical perspective to further deepen and make it more understandable for,
Yeah,
depending on what your background is.
right. And even if my perspective doesn't make it directly into the book, it's there supporting her and giving her impetus to go, oh yeah. And it's hard because look at Wiracocha. I mean, you're right. It is a male god, as we know. If you look it up on the internet now,
Yeah.
it comes up as a male god,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And this is what we're working with here. We're working with profound reordering, restructuring of the feminine spirituality of this planet.
Right.
This is what's kept us stupid, I'm sorry to say that word, and passive
Yeah.
to the powers,
Right.
right? And so, yeah, there's been like, if I know about it in Christianity.
Yes.
We all do.
Would you call that the patriarchal overlay?
Yes. And sometimes it's not even an overlay. It's just a reversal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes. Oh, yeah, it's really challenging.
You have to
So,
you have to discern through
yeah,
that veil of that was, yeah, that has
yeah,
been whitewashed or whatever you call it.
whatever you want to call it. It's so she was trying to go back to what the Carol were saying about Waracocha, go back to the Andean cosmology that Cindy has shared with us.
Uh-huh.
So, which she had got directly from these people who had been living up in the mountains since the advent of the Spanish,
Right.
since contact with the Spanish way back 500 years, 600 years ago, and had only recently in the 1950s, 60s come down off their mountain. So they were carrying an older, probably, we can probably assume, an older version of the mythology.
Yep.
So, and in my own path, I often look to visual records for things
Mm.
because, so much in the written record in my own tradition has been upended, you know. So, but if I go back to really early visual records, and
Mm.
this is something that Marguerite has done
Yeah.
as well,
Mm.
you go back to those visual records, you can see that, hold on a minute, that's not what's happening at all. Like you
Yeah.
can see things have been totally different. So, I mean, I've seen imagery about midwives, about the sacred womb, about the use of this, the use of a particular prayer position by women, which was actually used to make sacred space. There's all sorts of things that have been just covered over, but you can sometimes go back to the visual record. In Maureen's case, she was able to actually go back to these ancient myths that are also shared in her book, which include the Caro one. So,
Wow.
yeah.
It really feels like this book is so much more than I even had thought just by hearing you share more about all the background that's gone in to explain how this even has come into being and the bigger, I don't know, the mythological and I mean, it's just incredible hearing how much has been drawn on to explain and put a context and help us
Yeah.
connect to this seemingly like out there concept of parthenogenesis and enlightenment
Yeah.
through,
It's a
right?
life work. It's the
Yeah.
life work. She's been working on this since she was a child, basically. I mean, this
Ah,
really is her life path.
yeah.
And so that's what's in this.
Yeah.
And but it addresses so many things that we have to really get clear on
Mm,
in order to move forward as a human family
mm,
on planet Earth.
mm.
And that includes reclaiming the darkness,
Right.
reclaiming darkness as a, a principle, an active principle, not merely an absence of light, and connecting with how that darkness is a gestating space,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's in all the world's traditions, including the Old Testament. The darkness of God is in there. Not much quoted, but it's there. And so you've got this whole thing of where this is part of this darkness is connected with the cosmos, the cosmos as a generatrix, something that's generating
Mm,
new life, a cosmic void,
mm.
which is a cosmic womb. And how is that connected to our own wombs as women? And that's what the book explores. It actually goes through that. And it's in so doing, it starts to overturn those reversals that keep us sort of blind and unable to really work with AI, construct. It just seems like, I don't know how you feel about it, but it just feels like this whole thing is just being steamrollered over on us. And
Yeah.
it's like, what are we supposed to do? Well, if you read this book, you can do something. You can start working with the womb. You can start accessing what Maureen calls the horizontal energies,
Mm-hmm.
which come through the womb and the torus of the earth and the sun.
Right.
Yeah. So it's, you can actually do something about it. And I think that's very empowering, because so often these feelings of helplessness and powerlessness, I mean, they can feed themselves, and we start to get into learned helplessness and all this kind of stuff. This, and that's not Maureen. uh, just saying, do something, and we can do something, right?
Do you want to sort of summarize what you're talking about in a, a more even practical example of
Yes, I can give
how
you.
it's applicable? That would be
Yeah,
helpful, I think, for people to grok to the next level.
we are, as women, and I'm sorry, some of the recent women's spirituality movement hasn't helped us.
Okay.
We have become very caught up sometimes in our own personal narratives, our own personal stories,
Right.
right? And which is all part of healing and working through our own psychological integration and individuation and all that kind of stuff, which is part of our age. That is a masculine part of our age. We have to reclaim our feminine wisdom. And so, what the practice of the Dark Lodge does is it asks you to do that work of your personal work outside of the lodge, that you do
Mm,
it however you wish to do it. But that actually, when we come together in the lodge, we are there to receive cosmic wisdom
mm,
and to see what it is weaving between us. So, in a sense, all that individuation work, which by its very nature of its name divides us sometimes,
mm.
this work unifies. So I do know that when we were doing the Dark Lodge work, that we had women coming there who were from all different walks of life. And that there was something very strengthening about what was emerging from us and in our midst, in response to this receiving of the wisdom that was coming into us through the torus, but also through our own luminous structure.
Mm.
And so I think it's actually a way to move forward, and it was a way to move forward, to affirm a unifying wisdom emerging from amongst people of difference.
Ah,
And that's actually what was, and that's what we started this conversation with Maureen and I working together from very different backgrounds.
that's right.
And so I would love to see that grow and develop.
Mm,
I would actually love to see that these technologies, which actually allow us to bring the wisdom
mm,
of the cosmic void into our heart places,
mm.
where we store our negativity and our sympathy toward particular people, causes, or whatever, to allow us to see more clearly who they are in their wholeness. So I really see this practice as being very powerful. I think Maureen has also pointed out in the book how it's good for our health, because it stops us from bleeding excessively,
Mm.
which has been a big trap for women. Even Sri Kalishwar would say, women lose it every month. That's why there's less women who are enlightened. Oh my gosh, I was so mad when I heard that. But anyway, um, you know, but this idea that if we lose this womb blood
Yeah.
to excess,
Yes.
we actually are weakened. We are weakened. So how do we learn to work with that system so that it doesn't drain us, but actually nurtures us? That's what this technology does that Maureen outlines. It's no more, the pain of the period,
Right.
or the hot flashes of menopause. Oh,
Right.
like all these things, or osteoporosis. Oh,
Right.
all these things. It's about, no, we're going to access this power of the womb and the energies of the womb, and we're going to be able to direct it to our health, not only of ourselves individually, but to our community health, and fundamentally to the health of the planet. Because what we did notice when we started doing these dark lodges was that these strange solutions to problems would start coming to us. So, like, for instance, I was having trouble here in my own community with, youth violence. And in the process of working in this dark lodge, a totally different approach was given to me and then shared with amongst us. There were only 4 of us at the time in the dark lodge. I remember it very well. It was June something 2012. And a totally different approach came to it. And I remember this thing coming over me as a new way to embody myself in my local community, so that the violence of these young guys who were actually quite aggressive and sexually aggressive toward women would not get to me. And I remember that happening, and we talked about it afterwards, after the lodge finished. And I came back to my community, and the amount of difficulty I had with those guys tailed right off.
Wow.
No, I didn't do that. It wasn't me sitting in my room going, oh, I wonder how I can be different so they won't bother me so much. No, it was a womb power.
Womb
right?
power.
I also stopped bleeding heavily through those dark lodges. I stopped losing. I used to bleed very heavily. I would have huge clots. I stopped bleeding heavily through those moon lodges. Again, I didn't go in there saying, oh, please, like prayer, oh, please stop my heavy menstrual flows.
Right.
Okay. It just happened.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting.
Very.
Now, of course, none of this is scientifically verifiable. Okay.
Yet.
Okay.
Oh dear.
But mine, this is the point of the technology for the women to keep the wisdom and the power of the blood and the womb and move it around the body to different energy centers so that they can come to wholeness, whether it's your third eye, your heart needing to partake more of your high heart, whatever it is. You can use that womb blood, which Maureen calls an elixir, to do that.
Okay. Wow.
That's a really long summary. I'm sorry.
No, that was excellent. That was needed. Every drop of it was needed. And it's going to be
Good word, Michelle. Drop. We're on it.
I'm so excited to hear that. It was really good. I really needed all that practical, like this is practical basically. And I know you said it and Maureen has said it. This is not just woo-woo out there stuff. This is totally implementable and useful.
It's very scientific, actually.
Yeah.
Maureen has a very scientific mind.
She does. Yeah.
She does.
Yeah.
She's an artist, but being an artist, she's a draftswoman. Things are precise. She knows that's her.
Yeah.
So it reminds me so much of Hildegard of Bingen.
Right.
Who also was a woman scientist mystic.
Right.
And who developed these cosmologies, not just because, wouldn't it be fun to have a cosmology, but because she wanted to heal people. This is what this is. It's similar. It's that kind of vision that that's tested, that's tried, and is actually found to be helpful in the healing of actual people and actual communities. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. She's already talking about doing a part 2, but she said, I don't know if I'll get, but
She
more
will.
about the application of it, right?
Good. Yes, I think that's very essential and important.
Yeah.
And so you're really helping bridge into that and give people a sense of that. So that's super helpful.
But I mean, it's hard because I mean, we all get in our own little silos. And here I am. I'm very passionate about this. I'm a Christian. I believe in the virgin birth. You know, Christ died on the cross, was resurrected, and all this kind of stuff. You have your own belief systems. You know, other people who read it will have their own belief systems.
Yeah.
Don't close your mind to mystical science. Allow yourself to be open to this knowledge and wisdom stream. Yeah. And don't get caught up in belief and like, and all this kind of stuff. It's
Right.
hard for me. I mean, it's even scary for me to come on here and do an interview. I always be scared that you know, somebody will see me and go, "What are you doing on that pagan show?" You know, like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's hard. It is. But
Yeah.
you know what? I have to stand here and say, look, this is not about any of that. This is about recovering women's wisdom, the stream of our cultures, all of our cultures that was undermined by the dominator system. Yeah.
Right. 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 Which took away power, women's power and men's power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we've really covered. I know you have a ton more to say. Is there anything you think we've missed that should be said?
Just if you this really interests you at all, this
Yeah.
is totally new. What Maureen is doing is pioneering. I hate to use that word, but you know what I mean? It really is.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're not going to find it somewhere else. If this interests you at all, go on to her Kickstarter. This takes work and money to do this.
Yeah.
She's Maureen is a Taurus. She doesn't overspend. Okay. But she does need some money. So if you can just put in whatever you can put in, what this would be value, what is the value of this? What
Yeah.
is the value of this type of technology? This unifying, empowering, bringer together of people
Mm.
and women, restoration of women, all this kind of thing. What is that worth? And then go to her page and make a donation.
Yeah, and if you make a donation of 80 Canadian, which is 69 US, you actually get a hardback signed copy of this treasure.
I know. I
I
told her she
mean,
should ask more. But anyway, she
oh,
doesn't.
okay.
She's not like that. She will just say, look, I want people to get the book.
Yes.
She's a woman on a mission. She is
She is a
not,
woman.
this is about her. This is about her sharing what really matters to her.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you. I just 100% agree with you. And hopefully we can reach more people with your wonderful insights and framing and passion. And
Well, you too, Michelle. Thank you so much for what you have done for this as well, because you know you sharing it with your communities. It's hard for me to share it with some of the communities I know because of what I just said.
exactly.
It becomes difficult, but there is openness even amongst some of that as well, because
Right.
this goes beyond just what we would particularly call sectarian lines, you know.
Right. It's going to a higher frequency where we all can come together. So it's
Exactly.
very much fifth dimensional, yeah,
Exactly.
very
Mhm.
much.
Yep. Well, I
Well,
love talking with you. Blessings on you, sister, and thank you so very much for this opportunity.
thank you.
And thank you also to Bridget, who we invoked at the beginning of this
That's right.
gathering. St. Bridget, pray for us to give us that bright arrow, that clarity of thought that we need to communicate in the midst of this wonderful, generative, horizontal world that Maureen has conjured up for us.
Thank you. Well said. I think Bridget really came through because you were,
Oh, thank you. I
yeah.
really mean that. Thank you, Bridget. It's hard to talk about it
It
because it's
is.
so deep. It's
It
so
is.
deep.
Right. Well, amazing. You've done an amazing job of doing that. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll go now into the night,
Indeed, into the good
into the
darkness.
good dark.